A lot of people think of bonuses as something that's only relevant for info marketers or online marketers or something like that. But there are very few examples I can think of businesses that couldn't use bonuses effectively. I mean, something like if you're an ambulance business, then it might be that bonuses are not a relevant thing for you. But if your business is actually selling to hospitals or government or some bigger organizations, then again, bonuses could be relevant there. So really, you can almost certainly use bonuses effectively in your business. But a lot of people think of bonuses as just something to use to sweeten the deal. And that can work. I'm not saying it doesn't work. It definitely can work. But I think there's a much more effective way to use them. They still do also the sweetening of the deal, but they also work a lot better because you can use them as one of the most effective ways of negating objections. The usual way people deal with objections is basically argue that this objection is not really a valid concern to people. And that's a very difficult thing to do, at least compared to negating it by making it so that the offer itself makes the objection pointless. And I'll get to some examples soon enough. But overall, I think bonuses are either very overused or underused. Most businesses don't use them at all. And then the ones that do use bonuses often use them to an almost hilarious extent. I mean, bonuses often have a bad reputation because of how they are used in info products. Someone might be selling let's say a $1,000 online course, and then the bonuses are worth $25,000 or something. And how they usually do that is that they just claim that something has a specific value instead of a price. I don't do that. Like if I ever say that some bonus has a price, it means that I actually sell it for that price normally. It is available and actively sold for that price. But I'm also very careful with what sort of bonuses I include in things so that people don't feel like they were left out of being able to get something as a bonus instead of paying for it. But anyway, people who use those as these, like come up with imaginary values for bonuses and such, create this image of bonuses as almost a joke. I mean, it still works, so it's not a joke in that way. It absolutely works, even if the prices are kind of ludicrous, even if they have nothing to do with the actual price they would charge if they sold the same things. But my point is, you can use it in a way, or you can do bonuses in a way that doesn't seem like a joke or doesn't come across as a completely ridiculous amount of money compared to what you would normally actually charge for them. But let's go through a few examples of what a bonus could be. I think an online course is one of the most common ones in the online marketing space, and it can work really well. Just a related additional training on how to use the thing you actually sell, or how to do some related thing that people will be concerned about. It could also be in-person training or group coaching or even personal coaching with basically the same idea. It could be an event ticket to some event that is related or just otherwise really desirable for your target customers. It could be software or extra capacity to a software. So if you have some sort of limitation on how many reports it can create normally or whatever, you can increase that as a bonus. You can also use guarantees as bonuses. I don't usually consider them bonuses, but technically you could do that, especially if you normally don't offer all the same guarantees, then you could offer this extra guarantee as basically a bonus. It could also be like a related product or an additional product. So if you sell a camera, you could include a camera bag into it, or it could be spare parts. Like I bought some sort of a weed whacker and it came with extra blades to it, or it could be some other like additional parts to what you sell. It can also be something like templates or workbooks or other materials that make it easier to actually do the work that's related to using the product or service or something along those lines. And that's not even close to a comprehensive list. A bonus can pretty much be just about anything that just adds some form of value to your offer. But let's go through how you actually create effective bonuses. The first step is to list out all the objections people might have for why they don't buy. And we are concerned about actual objections, not the excuses people make. So when people, for example, say that something's too expensive, it is possible that that's true. But 90% of the time, probably more, that's not the real reason, but rather it's about they don't really want the outcomes enough, or they don't understand the value of the outcomes enough to want to pay for it as much as you're charging. Or maybe they don't trust that they really will get those results, regardless of what you're saying. They don't have 100% certainty of it, and therefore they don't feel like the price is right. So if you could truly promise that, well, you have a magic wand and they will instantly get that result, then they'd be happy to pay. Which also relates to, it might feel like they have this idea that it takes too much time or too much work, or it's too difficult to do the work to actually get to the outcomes. And therefore the price seems too high, or they say that it's too expensive, because that's a very easy thing to usually say. The same thing goes with, I don't have the time for this. All the same reasons. They don't really understand what they are about to get, or the potential downsides of not acting on it, or they're not certain they will get it, or they don't trust you enough, or something else. Usually it's not truly that they wouldn't have time for it. It is entirely up to them how they use their time. Now, people have more or less control over it, and there are certainly cases where people really don't have the time realistically to do what they would have to do to get the benefits. But in most of the cases, if you're targeting at least somewhat reasonably the right people, that's probably not the case. So it's much more likely that they have some other concern and they are just saying that they don't have the time for it. The same is true with a lot of other objections as well. Even if the people are complaining about a very specific feature that isn't in your product or something like that, often those are excuses, not real objections. So what we're concerned about primarily should be the actual excuses. So when you're listing objections, think of specifically what are the underlying reasons why they don't buy. And regardless of what they say, of course, be mindful of what people complain about, because those might be valid concerns. But a lot of the time, those are just excuses, and we need to know what the objections are, because otherwise you're just putting a band-aid on a flesh wound. It doesn't help. The second step is to think through what could alleviate or even completely negate the objections. What could you change or add on to the offer to do that? Ideally, like the most effective way to do this is to make the offer, as in your product or service and everything that comes with it, in itself already deal with the objections. Make it so that it doesn't make any sense for people to complain about something. So for example, it's pretty hard to complain about, I don't have the time for this, if you promise to do all the work for them. Like if it is something where you can actually do all the work for them, then no one's going to complain that, oh, this will take too much of my time. But often that doesn't work out, or you might already have a product or service and you don't want to go through the trouble of changing it fundamentally in any significant way. So I'll give a few examples of what sort of a bonus you could add to a specific offer to get rid of a real objection. So the first example is from my own business. The other two are more generic. The example is a product called Six Figure Website, which is an online course. You can get coaching with it if you want, but basically an online course that goes through what makes a website truly effective at generating leads and sales. Not the design, not the technology, but what makes it effective. A lot of people have this idea that they're not getting enough traffic to their website for it to really make sense for them to work on the website to make it more effective. If you really think about that, that's not really a valid objection, but it is something that's on people's minds, and I rather don't start arguing about it. I do explain to people why they probably should first do something about their website and only then start pushing a lot of people there. But people have often this idea that, well, traffic is the first thing they should fix. So, since the product itself doesn't go through how you get more traffic, it sort of alludes to it a little bit, then at least during a special promotion, I'm going to include a collection of other products all about different traffic methods into the offer. It's called No Nonsense Guide to Traffic. And one of the components of that is a training program on advertising, which I also sell separately. And the idea is that with all these different traffic methods, advertising, guest blogging, partnership marketing, search engine optimization, Instagram, probably something else as well, all of those covered with their individual trainings, I don't think really almost anyone is going to think that, well, I should first just figure out the traffic part, because you're obviously going to get the traffic part covered with this offer, the special offer, I mean. So That's one example, and that's a very common type of example of a bonus in the online marketing world. Another example that happens a lot, but often isn't really considered a bonus, is that if you sell software, especially one that requires some sort of installation or integration and such, sometimes, at least in some cases, it's a very common concern that the customers or potential customers don't feel like they really know how to do the integration, or they worry that the integration will be extremely time consuming for their own employees. So if you then include you doing the integration for them, you mostly get rid of that objection. It doesn't always completely negate it, but it at least makes it very, very minor compared to what it would be if they had to deal with it on their own. So the point there is that just do it for them. Do something on their behalf so they don't have to deal with the thing that they're worried about being time consuming or difficult or risky. And the third example would be some form of a product that isn't super obvious how you use it. Well, if you would include as a bonus hands-on training on how to use it, that would make it a lot easier for some people to buy, especially people who are not used to using that type of a product. I think a simple example would be just offering basically training on how to use a product at the store when people buy it. So something like a camera store could very well use this. Once you buy a camera, we will show you how to use it, what are the right settings, and help you understand it. That could be basically a bonus that is very easy to do. The people there almost certainly already do it, but if you just make it explicit, it becomes a more appealing thing for people, especially those who are worried about, do I actually then know what to do with this product if I buy it? The third step, so once you have ideas of what could be the bonus that you build to negate a specific objection, the third step is to figure out, does it make any economical sense, or can you make it make economical sense? So for example, if you sell a very low cost product, or if it's, let's say, a very low cost software, but the integration project is massive, you couldn't really include the integration into the cost of the product unless you raise the price of the product significantly. So in that case, just adding it as a bonus doesn't really make sense. You'd have to have people be your customers for 1,000 years before you would recoup the cost of it, so it doesn't work. So you have to go through all those considerations. With physical products especially, this becomes a concern very quickly, especially if your cost of producing those products is high, or if you're buying at all more expensive products to use as bonuses. That's one of the reasons why digital goods are very good bonuses. The delivery cost of those is very low, so once you have them built, you can deliver them with minimal additional cost as a bonus. That's one of the reasons they're so common as well. Same goes with something like an event ticket. Unless you really are losing at sale, so if you always sell out your events and people actually pay normal price for all those tickets, then giving out a few free ones doesn't really affect anything. You just get more people to the event. And depending on the event, that might even mean that you make more sales. So that's another consideration. You have to just think through, what would it cost to actually do this? If it is something like guide customers on how to use the product they just bought, that has some cost. You might need to have an extra person at the store during rush hour, but mostly it doesn't add that much cost to it. You can also consider it as just customer service cost going down, because then people won't email you with all their concerns and problems afterwards. So even if it isn't a physical store, if you already have some customer service, then mitigating some of those issues will at least increase customer satisfaction, but also potentially reduce the number of customer service hours used by the customers who don't know what to do with the product they managed to buy. And then the fourth step is to just create the bonus or start including it in your offers. And they can be something that you don't always offer. It can be something that is conditional, or it can be that you offer different bonuses for different customers depending on the situation. Especially that's relevant if you do one-on-one selling, because then you can hear that, well, they might have problems with this thing, so let's include our service there so that it doesn't become an issue later on in the negotiation. And ideally, you do that before people start thinking about those objections. It's not always possible, but whenever you can tell people sort of, hey, this won't be an issue because of this, before they even thought of that potential issue, then usually things go much more smoothly. One more thing, I think bonuses are often thought of as just an afterthought, and they shouldn't be. I mean, they can literally be an afterthought, but I think they should be high enough quality for you to feel happy to sell them on their own. And for you to also assume that the customers who buy those at full price on their own are very happy with what they get. That's at least how I approach them. I do sometimes include basically free bonuses that I don't sell separately, but that's unusual. There's one exception really to that. Mostly, if I ever include bonuses, they are actual separate things that people can pay normal prices for, and those normal prices are what I show people as the value. That's another consideration. I don't think it makes sense to oversell the value of the bonuses, because it just sets people up for disappointment. If you don't feel comfortable charging, let's say $500 for a product, then claiming that its value is $500 seems a little iffy to me. It can be effective, but I wouldn't like to do that. In next week's video, I'll go through how I created a new product, an online course, in 4 days. And if you're interested in seeing how that's done and how you can also plan new products very rapidly, because that's really what it's about, how you do everything before you start actually creating it. If you make mistakes in the planning part, then it's going to balloon into this massive project. I have plenty of experience of that happening. There's one project right now that had ballooned from something like 200-hour project into well over 1,000 hours by now, and it's not even close to done. So I know what I'm talking about when I say that it can balloon. But yeah, next week I'll go through that process. What are the steps to making it as easy and simple as possible, while also making sure that you actually create something really good. If you want to see that, remember to subscribe. If you have any questions or comments about bonuses or creating new products, just leave them in the comments. And if you leave a like, click the like button, you can think of it as a small thank you, because it really helps me and I appreciate it. So I'll see you in the next video.